everyone! Back with another article. This article is super cool. It's pretty short, but I really enjoyed reading it because I think in general it kind of summarizes the entire purpose and point behind me wanting to create this page, put out this information on these different platforms, and I just think it's really important that everybody has access to sexual education, especially those on the autism spectrum, and I believe that this article really highlights those needs. The article is titled Sexual Knowledge and Victimization in Adults with Autism Spectrum Disorders, written by S.M. Brown-Lavoie, M.A. Vesely, and J.A. West in March 25th of 2014. A little old, but I think the information still pertains. The abstract states, there is a significant gap in understanding the risk of sexual victimization in individuals with autism spectrum disorders, ASD, and the variables that contribute to risk. Age-appropriate sexual interest, limited sexual knowledge and experiences, and social deficits may place adults with ASD at increased risk. 95 adults with ASD and 117 adults without ASD completed questionnaires regarding sexual knowledge sources, actual knowledge, perceived knowledge, and sexual victimization. Individuals with ASD obtained less of their sexual knowledge from social sources, more sexual knowledge from non-social sources, had less perceived and actual knowledge, and experienced more sexual victimization than controls. The increased risk of victimization by individuals with ASD was partially mediated by their actual knowledge. The link between knowledge and victimization has important clinical implications for interventions. The article starts off with, individuals with ASD have been found to display an interest in sexual interactions and to engage in sexual behaviors, yet may lack developmentally appropriate education in sexuality, sexual health, and healthy relationships. Researchers have found that individuals with ASD have lower levels of sexual knowledge than comparison groups, both when assessed through self-report or parent report, yet have similar levels of comprehension of sexual knowledge. That's not fair. Researchers have made a distinction between an individual's actual knowledge and their perception of sexual knowledge, with both reported as important for safe sexual practices. Ryan et al. From 2007 found that males are more likely to report higher levels of perceived knowledge than females, and in males, this perceived knowledge is related to condom use, whereas actual knowledge is not. Having high perceived knowledge with inaccurate actual knowledge increases the risk for not using contraceptives compared to individuals with low perceived knowledge. Exactly, that's why this is dangerous, because the difference between actual knowledge and perceived knowledge is that actual knowledge is what you actually know and perceived knowledge is what you think you know. And so, based off of what I just read, it seems as if from this research in 2007, there were males that reported to think that they knew more about sexual knowledge and it only seemed to pertain to condom use, and in reality, they actually did not know that much. Like, they didn't have actual knowledge. And so, as the article states, having a high perception of knowledge with inaccurate actual knowledge increases the risk for not using contraceptives. Especially, the only thing that they're focusing on is the condom use, and that is inaccurate actual knowledge. They're not using condoms. Poor sexual knowledge in individuals with ASD may be related to their restricted range of knowledge sources available. Mezhabin and Stokes found that individuals with ASD were more likely to report television and, by making mistakes in their list of sexual knowledge and sources, and less likely to report social sources. That's really unfair and that's really upsetting because people shouldn't just be having to be forced to make mistakes, trial and error to see what they're doing is okay, is safe, is what they like. In addition, many parents of individuals with ASD reported that they lacked the confidence to discuss sexuality and sexual related topics with their children for fear that discussing sex will increase adolescent sexual interest or behaviors. This is really interesting to me because it kind of reminded me about the last article that I talked about. One, not only is there not a lot of information out there, but two, the people who are in charge of doing these things are uncomfortable talking about these subjects to begin with. I think it's really interesting that this article added the fact that the parents think that by talking about it, it's not even that they lack one aspect is that they lack the confidence to discuss it, but another aspect is that they think that their child they will have a higher likelihood of having sexual interest and behaviors. And that's super ironic because that's like the exact opposite of how kids usually react to things, right? When things are taboo, when things are secret, that's when you want to experiment, that's when you want to try those things. I tell you, don't think of elephant, the first thing that you're gonna think of is an elephant. A self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, because if they're so scared that their kid is going to be more sexually active, and because of that, they keep the information away, unfortunately/fortunately, the child is going to figure out that information one way or another. And unfortunately, a lot of kids with ASD are more likely to do it through TV or by making mistakes, and that's not fair to them. Most concerning is the potential that the combination of age-appropriate sexual motivation and interest, limited sexual knowledge and experiences, and additional social deficits may place adolescents and young adults with ASD at increased risk for sexual violence victimization. Sexual violence victimization, sexual aggression, and sexual abuse are terms used to label being a victim of the act of coercion, use of drugs or alcohol, or the threat or use of physical force to obtain unwanted sexual contact. The researchers aimed to explore the differences between knowledge sources, actual knowledge, perceived knowledge, and sexual victimization in individuals with high-functioning ASD and a comparison group of peers without ASD. Participants. The current study involved 2 groups of participants: 95 participants with high-functioning ASD between the ages of 19 and 43 years old, and 117 participants without ASD matched on mean chronological age. Groups did not significantly differ with respect to the proportion of males versus females. Groups did not differ in visible minority status, education, or in self-reported sexual orientation. Super lovely. For materials, all questionnaires and specific questions were selected or adapted in order to ensure that they were concrete and could be clearly understood by a grade 8 reading level. Sounds good. Demographics. Variables of interest include age, sex, visible minority status, sexual orientation, level of education, and ASD diagnosis. Given the low rates of queer, two-spirited, bisexual, and other, the groups were collapsed for any demographical analyses into heterosexual and non-heterosexual. The researchers used 5 different questionnaires with the participants of the study. The first one was the Autism Spectrum Quotient. The AQ is a 50-item questionnaire designed to measure 5 different areas of functioning related to ASD: social skills, attention switching, attention to detail, communication, and imagination. The second questionnaire is sexual knowledge sources. Sexual knowledge sources were examined across 3 domains: sexually transmitted infections, STIs, sexual behaviors, and contraceptives. Participants indicated if they received their knowledge in each of these domains, with 11 possible sources, including 6 social sources and 5 non-social sources. 6 social sources included parent/guardian, teacher, friend/peer, boyfriend, girlfriend, romantic partner, religious figure, and a support worker. The non-social sources included television, radio, magazine, internet, educational brochures, pamphlets, and pornography. The third questionnaire used was for sexual knowledge. The revised Knowledge of Sexual Health questionnaire is a 37-item questionnaire measuring actual knowledge, knowledge sources, and self-efficacy. The 25 actual knowledge questions were used in the current study related to STIs, contraception, and reproductive health. Participants responded by indicating if a statement is true or false. The fourth questionnaire was perceived knowledge. A 5-item questionnaire created by the authors was used to measure the participants' perception of their sexual knowledge. The questions inquired about perceived knowledge of sexual health, contraception, and risky behavior. Lastly, sexual victimization. The Sexual Experiences Survey Victimization version was used to examine experiences of sexual victimization. Modifications to the survey included changing the survey so that both males and females could complete the victimization skills, and rewording of the sexual contact items to make them more explicit in their meanings. The SES consists of 10 items reflecting varying levels of sexual victimization, on which an individual endorses whether they have experienced that type of victimization. Results. Sexual knowledge sources. Participants with ASD reported obtaining knowledge from fewer social sources in each of the 3 domains: knowledge about STIs, knowledge regarding sexual behaviors, and knowledge about contraceptives. Participants with ASD also reported obtaining knowledge from more non-social sources in each of the 3 domains: And I think that makes a lot of sense, especially when it comes to the social challenges many people with ASD face. The ASD group was 2.53 to 3.35 times less likely to report obtaining information pertaining to STIs from their parents, teachers, and peers, and 1.66 to 3.51 times more likely to report such knowledge from television/radio and pornography relative to the comparison group. I feel like that's just super sad because television and pornography can be unrealistic. When it comes to actual and perceived knowledge, participants with ASD reported less perceived knowledge than the comparison group. With regard to actual knowledge, participants with ASD had less actual knowledge than the comparison group. Sexual victimization. Individuals with ASD were almost 3 times more likely to experience unwanted sexual contact, 2.7 times more likely to experience sexual coercion, and 2.4 times more likely to experience rape than the comparison group. 78% of respondents with ASD reported at least one occurrence of sexual victimization compared to 47.4% of the comparison group. Males with ASD were more likely to experience victimization compared to males without ASD for contact, coercion, and rape. Women with ASD were more likely to experience sexual contact and sexual coercion than women without ASD. There was no significant differences between men and women within the ASD group or within the control group for any types of victimization. That's why this research is so important, because 78% reporting to have at least one occurrence of sexual victimization. Again, 47% in the control group is absolutely horrendous, but 78% of the people with ASD reported having at least one bad experience with sexual contact in some capacity. It breaks my heart into literally a trillion pieces. Both males and females with ASD are at a higher likelihood of experiencing sexual victimization, and that's why sexual education is important for everybody. Overall findings. We found that individuals with ASD obtain less of their sexual knowledge from social sources and more from non-social sources, have less perceived and actual knowledge, and experience more sexual victimization than individuals without ASD. We also found that the increase of victimization by individuals with ASD is partially mediated by their level of actual knowledge. They are able to get through things because they have a certain level of actual knowledge when it comes to sexual education, but it's through the trial and error that they've had to go through, and that just hurts my heart. And I feel like the overall findings really well encapsulates the need for sex education for everybody. While typically developing individuals, indicated sources such as peers, parents, and teachers, individuals with ASD included television and by making mistakes in their list. In the current study, we found that individuals with ASD were less likely to report receiving knowledge from peers, parents, and teachers across all types of sexual knowledge. Core social deficits associated with ASD and the fact that individuals with ASD face rejection and social isolation may interfere with important opportunities for gaining sexual knowledge from these social sources. Lovely. I love that the article included that, because what does it mean by social challenges, right? Well, social isolation and rejection are two important aspects that could be really detrimental to whether one wants to socialize. And so if those with ASD are at a higher likelihood of experiencing those two things when it comes to social challenges, it just shows more proof as to why their level of access to sexual knowledge is lower, and thus their likelihood of sexual victimization is unfortunately higher. Also, this freaked me out. This is the first study to use self-report to ask adults with ASD about their actual and perceived sexual knowledge and experiences of victimization. As indicated with other special populations, self-reported health and life experiences are important for the evaluation of current well-being and health care, yet are often ignored in favor of parent or caregiver reporting. No. As an adult, no matter who you are, of course, support level is important in this conversation, but your parents should not be talking about your sexual preferences for you if you have the ability to do it yourself. Even though there seems to be a lot of pros to this article, there were some limitations to the study. It was limited to convenient sampling, and the self-selection may limit generalizability to larger groups of adults with ASD. And the data collected pertaining specifically to sexual victimization occurring after 14 years of age, which may have limited the rates of victimization reported. Absolutely, victimization could happen at any age. I think just for maybe clarity's sake, or maybe for as like a starting point, they chose the age of 14 to be when they asked their participants to start recounting their experiences of potential sexual victimization. But as we could see, that is a limitation because it may have limited the rates of the victimizations being reported, right? Because again, 14 is just 14. What about 13, 12? You know what I'm saying? So love that they included that. And then conclusion. This study contributes to the literature by providing initial evidence for a link between sexual victimization and a lack of sexual knowledge in an ASD sample. Having low levels of sexual knowledge places individuals at risk above and beyond what can be accounted for by having an ASD alone. Totally agree. Beautiful article. I think everyone, as I keep saying in this video, everyone deserves access to sexual information, sexual knowledge about themselves, about others, contraceptives, STIs, everything of this sort, right? And so when it comes to those with ASD, they deserve it too. And this article was so important because it shows the unfathomable and unfortunate consequences that come from this lack of information being accessible to people who have ASD. They're at a higher likelihood of sexual victimization, and they shouldn't be. No one should be at a higher likelihood of that type of thing. So thank you so much for listening. I really enjoyed reading it, and I can't wait to find the next article. So thanks.